Hi everyone, I'm here with my friend and colleague Margie Nichols, who is a certified sex therapist and a clinical psychologist. And I wanted to ask you, because as someone who has worked and lived with the BDSM community, you have a tremendous experience and knowledge about a word that has become central today, consent.
Yes.
What do we need to learn about consent that we can learn from you?
So one thing about the BDSM community is consent is, forgive the phrase, almost a fetish in the BDSM community. Nothing is assumed ahead of time. In other words, you do not assume anything about your partner's sexual likes, dislikes, or mood in that particular moment. And so everything is negotiated. There's long, extended, complicated negotiations around every sexual act, every behavior, and the person who's who you're trying to draw out, who's talking about it, has the option not just of saying, yes, I consent to that, or no, I don't, but under certain circumstances, right? So, yes, I'm really enthusiastic about that, or I'm not so enthusiastic about it, but frankly, if you really want it, I'll do it. Right? That's a different kind of consent.
So you're talking about degrees
That's right.
of consent, but I am hearing people say, what if that? Now, if I want to touch you, I have to ask you. I have to wait. I mean, how will I know? It's like the whole thing becomes so stilted and so artificial.
It doesn't if the negotiations are all done ahead of time and you come to an understanding of each other. I don't think, I'm not a fan of the idea of consent actually in the moment, okay, now can I kiss you, right? In BDSM, it's not done in the moment because that would ruin the moment, right? It would just kill the whole mood. It's done ahead of time.
So the ahead of time at this moment in the society at large is a ahead of time that needs to come from the culture from the top, not from the moment of a meeting between two people.
Right, but it also is a headset of people, right? Because think about it, people, non-BDSM people don't really talk very much about different sexual preferences and erotic fantasies and, what you really are looking for and what you're only lukewarm about. How many times do people do that before they have sex? Not very often.
So consent comes with communication.
Yes, consent comes with extensive communication and a mutual understanding and agreement ahead of time. Not during sex, but ahead of time.
And what is the ahead of time on a societal level that we need to set in place?
That's a good question. I guess to teach people a different expectation about sex, to teach people that it is healthy and a good thing to explore your own sexual desires and needs, and it's crucial to communicate them to a partner. If we'd had that ethic, I think things would be different. But we don't even, most women, for example, if you ask them, and I'm sure as a therapist you've had this experience, what do you like sexually? You sort of get a shrug. They really haven't thought about it. Like, well, I really like, warm, tender, gentle. So, well, what does that mean? Because your definition of warm and gentle and tender is not the same as the next person's. We really need to encourage people to think much more directly and consciously and specific about their own sexuality, because you can't consent unless you understand your own sexuality. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that you've given me 3 elements to consent. It is the communication and the negotiation, but you cannot negotiate and communicate unless there is your own self-awareness.
Exactly.
And then there needs to be the respect for the likes and dislikes and the limits of the other.
That's right. And a respect that means non-judgment, right? So I accept your limit without judging you one way or another for having that limit. I accept your preferences without judging you. It doesn't mean I have to share those preferences, but I do it without judgment.
Right.
Right.
I had a powerful example of a judgment recently told to me of a person who said, I'd love to take you. And the woman didn't answer. And so when she didn't answer, did you hear what I just said? So the woman didn't answer. And then he didn't like the not answer and the rejection. So he began to basically put her down in other ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's another very insidious,
That's
common
right.
judgment.
That's right.
You know, you rejected me, I'll reject you more.
Right, exactly.
You made me feel bad, I'll
Right.
step on you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think in the BDSM community, sex isn't personalized the way, I mean, most people personalize sex, just crazy personalize it. And in the BDSM community, it's not really seen that way. You know, a rejection doesn't have the same power as it does elsewhere.
Because the whole culture is a culture of consent.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Like I said, it's almost a fetish. I mean, it can get to the point where sometimes it's like enough already, right? But for whatever reason, consent in the BDSM community has always been a very, very important topic of discussion. And a lot of policing of the community, you know, self-policing of the community, right? When I was involved in the BDSM scene, I could go as a single woman to a BDSM club and feel completely safe. Because if there was somebody in that club that was a little sketchy, the people in the club were going to come up and tell me and warn me and stay away, or they would intervene. So, you know, a lot of that consent is so important that we're going to actually take the responsibility for other people.
So if I hear you well and I translate this into lessons for our society about consent at this moment, it is that consent involves ongoing communication. It involves relative self-knowledge.
Yes.
In order to know what it is that we are consenting to
Right,
and
right.
communicating about. It involves a communal looking out for each other.
That's right, a shared ethic and a shared sense of responsibility for others in the community. Yes.
And it involves safety.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Margie. Actually, you gave me a real frame for thinking about consent
Well,
at this particular moment.
Well, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Esther.